Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I want to welcome you to this special meeting of the Economic Development Committee, Thursday the 25th, here in Phoenix Hall at WLCAC. I'm pleased to be with you this evening. I see at least one of my other council colleagues, Mike Bonin, is with us, who in fact is a co-author of the measure we're going to be discussing this evening. Mr. Clerk, why don't you read the item before us, please?
Item number 1 is comments from the public regarding establishing a minimum wage for all employees within the City of Los Angeles and inclusion of wage theft provisions to any citywide minimum wage ordinance.
Thank you. Over the past few months, many of you have read the headlines on the minimum wage issue. As it turns out, reasonable minds will differ on this topic, but there are some key points related to this debate that are indisputable. In Los Angeles today, we're facing a poverty crisis. The fastest growing segment of poor in our city are working poor. These are people who go to work every day and earn their pay with dignity and pride, yet their wages barely afford them the basics. As our city's housing and food prices continue to soar, wages shrink. And this underemployment doesn't just affect the pocketbook of workers. We know that folks who are working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet don't have the time to be involved in their community. And poverty impacts the lives of their children in real ways, leading to health problems and lower academic performance. Poverty and income inequality are key civil rights issues for our time. And addressing these issues is why I'm joined by my colleagues, Council Members Nuri Martinez, who's on her way, Mike Bonin, who I just introduced, and Gil Cedillo, to introduce a motion proposing to raise wages in Los Angeles to $13.25 by 2017 and $15.25 by 2019. I have a sense of urgency to get this policy enacted as soon as possible because our families cannot wait anymore. To that end, as a committee, we requested our chief legislative analyst to commission an economic impact report of our proposed minimum wage increase. We made sure that the study looked at the impacts that this change would have on local workers, businesses, and the economy. We took into consideration special circumstances, like the impact on small businesses and nonprofits, as well as youth and transitional employment, among other relevant considerations. To inspire a robust debate, I also asked our business and labor partners to produce their own studies on this issue. What the process produced were very different studies that have given us a variety of perspectives. As a committee, we got to hear from the authors of those studies earlier this week. But in these hearings, we're going to focus on getting your feedback. This, without a doubt, is the most critical piece of the discussion. Your thoughts, your ideas, your suggestions. Before we begin the hearing, though, I'm going to invite our Chief Legislative Analyst, Sharon So, to give us a brief summary of the reports that we received. Afterwards, we'll have an opportunity to hear from you, and we've asked that you submit a comment card if you wish to speak. We're going to ask you to hold your comments to 1 minute so that we can make sure that we hear from everyone that has a desire to speak. And so, without any further ado, let me present our Chief Legislative Analyst for the City of Los Angeles, Sharon So.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, let's give her a hand. She's a first for a number of reasons. We're not going to say why. You guess. All right.
It's a pleasure to be here in Watts. Thank you very much, Councilman. So, as just by way of an overview, in October of 2014, the Economic Development Committee considered 2 motions relative to the citywide minimum wage proposal. These proposals proposed raising the minimum wage to $13.25 by 2017 and the possibility of $15.25 by 2019. The motions also ask for analysis of impacts on small business and nonprofits and also on the overall city economy. Following testimony at that meeting, the CAO and the CLA's office was asked to commission a study of the impacts of the proposal, as well as other issues that were identified by the committee. The CAO and CLA conducted a competitive process and selected the Institute for Research on Labor and Employment out of the University of California, Berkeley. On March 20, a few weeks ago, we did receive that study, and in addition to that, at the request of the chair of the Economic Development Committee, the city received two other reports, one from Beacon Economics, commissioned by the Chamber of Commerce, and also a report from Economic Roundtable that was commissioned by the County Federation of Labor. All of these reports are available online at the city website. A couple of days ago, on Tuesday, the Economic Development Committee did hear presentations by the authors of those studies, and each presented their findings and then answered questions from the committee, as well as the public was also invited to provide testimony as well, and all of those comments can be heard online on the city website at lacity.org. And also, just by way of notifying the public, the chair also asked us to commission a peer review of the studies. That process resulted in the selection of two professors, one from UCLA, as well as one from the University of Georgia and RAND Corporation. We expect that peer review will be released sometime later in April. So tonight's meeting is really the first of three meetings in the community to solicit input from the community on the proposed minimum wage, as well as to hear impacts on residents, business, and also on the city economy. And if there is support for moving forward on such a minimum wage proposal, then it will also inform the decision on how that minimum wage will be implemented, the amount, the time frame, any exemptions, and any other components of that proposal. So we have two other meetings that will be scheduled. One will be on next week and Tuesday in Van Nuys, and the third one will be next Thursday at the Museum of Tolerance. And of course, the public is always invited to submit any comments. They can do that online on the city website. And I don't know if the committee wanted to go through briefly on what the broad findings of each of the studies were.
Yes, why don't you give us just a brief.
So with regard to the UCB report, and I'm just going to summarize very briefly, these were very extensive reports. With regard to the University California Berkeley report, they essentially found that the proposal will have significant benefits to workers and their families, and they found that by 2017 that 542,000 people would see an increase in wages, and by 2019, 609,000 workers would see an increase. They also assessed that the operating costs to impact on businesses on average would be 0.5% by 2017 and by 0.9% by 2019. They also determined that consumer demand would also decrease as a result of increasing costs, and as a result, there would be some job loss of about 1,500 jobs by 2017 and 3,400 jobs by 2019. But when calculating the regional impact, they found that there would actually be an increase in the county of about 3,600 jobs by 2017 and 5,200 jobs in 2019. They basically conclude that the benefits would outweigh the costs in the city, and when the county impact is considered, the net impact will be positive. They also found that it would be essential to monitor and enforce any minimum wage proposal, and also that nonprofits and some small businesses may also need some special assistance. With regard to the Beacon report, they found that the proposal is overly broad and does not provide a good cost-benefit return to the city. They indicated that the proposal would aid some families, but they also found that the games would not focus on the people that would most are in need. They found that only $1 and $4 paid by the city consumers and businesses would benefit that target group. And they also determined that the job loss to the city, or actually let me rephrase that, they determined that with regard to job creation, that up to 73 to 140,000 jobs could potentially not be created as a result of the proposal. They basically conclude that the proposal will have significant negative consequences, and the benefits will be very, very small, with only 1/4 of the benefit going to the targeted groups. And the cost to the city is very high, possibly erasing job growth. The report also goes on to identify mitigating factors should the city decide to move forward with a minimum wage. Economic Roundtable was the third report. They found that LA is basically ahead, not a good thing, in wage inequality. They focused primarily their study on the $15.25 amount, and they determined that for every $1 increase in wages, it would result in $1.12 in stimulus to the economy. They determined that approximately 24,000 jobs would be created in LA, with 46,000 jobs created in the region. They believe that businesses will be able to make adjustments to prices, and there'll be very little changes to hours and benefits. They did indicate that there were some industries, as did the other studies indicate, that there are several industries that we should pay special attention to should a proposal move forward. The Economic Roundtable basically concludes that the proposal will be an adjustment for businesses, but will result in a bigger, more sustainable economy for LA. And they also determined that, found that it would be an engine for economic recovery in low-income neighborhoods. But some businesses will be challenged to adapt. Their report also presents best practices if a minimum wage proposal does move forward.
Thank you. The reports are certainly giving us a lot of good information for us to use in our deliberations, considerations of whether or not we should change the law, and if so, how. But the most important element certainly are your thoughts, your ideas, your suggestions as well. And so I'm proud pleased that you're here this evening, and we look forward to hearing from you. I mentioned I had a colleague here, Mike Bonin, from the 11th Councilmanic District. Also pleased that another colleague, Mitchell Farrell, from the 13th is here with us. And I'm going to exercise my discretion as chair and allow my colleagues to make opening statements if they choose. And if so, Mike, why don't you come on up first? Mike Bonin. CD 11, this is near the airport, West LA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Et cetera, et cetera. Good evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for holding this hearing. Thank you to everybody here tonight who came out to share with this committee and the entire City Council how this proposal will impact you and the quality of your life. Let me start by saying what I said as a candidate. Let me start by saying what I said when I took office, what I said when you and I and Ms. Martinez proposed a living wage for hotel workers in the city of Los Angeles, and what you and I said when we proposed this proposal before us today to raise the minimum wage here in Los Angeles. What I said then, what I say now, what I continue to echo is that here in the city of Los Angeles, it is absolutely essential that we raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Thank you. Raising the minimum wage here in Los Angeles serves many purposes, one of which is the cause of social justice to help lift people out of poverty. Another is to boost the Los Angeles economy and give people more spending and earning power so that our economy can continue to grow. But it also has a multiplier effect. By giving people more money in their pockets, it gives them an additional resource to strengthen the family here in Los Angeles. And by being able to strengthen the family here in Los Angeles, that improves the health care of their family. It improves the well-being of their neighborhood. It improves the education of their children. It's an important thing for us to do. We have had, as Ms. So just explained, 3 studies before us today that were presented to the City Council. When I was a kid, I grew up watching Sesame Street. And Big Bird used to sing, when they'd put 3 or 4 things next to each other, which one of these things doesn't belong? Which one of these things is not like the other? And in the 3 studies we have one of them which is not like the other. We have a study from the Economic Roundtable and a study from Berkeley, which shows that there is clear benefit to the city of Los Angeles and to working families here in Los Angeles to raising the minimum wage. And then we have a 3rd study from Beacon Economics, which shows something very different. Now, you can say that Beacon Economics is wrong because there's 2 studies that outweigh them, and 2 is greater than 1. Or you can use common sense. There are things in the Beacon Economics study which just don't make sense. It makes the assertion that raising the minimum wage here in Los Angeles would really not do very much to help people's quality of life. It makes the assertion that 43% of the people who earn minimum wage here in Los Angeles live in households that make more than $55,000 a year. I don't know what city they surveyed, but it's not the city of Los Angeles that I'm living in. It further said, and maybe I read this wrong, maybe they did not mean to state it this way, but there is an element in their report that recommends eliminating the minimum wage for segments of the economy. And that, to me, is either a real big typo or something really wrong in terms of a policy recommendation. And we cannot follow the advice of someone who's making that sort of recommendation. We have the cause in Los Angeles to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. We have the ability here in Los Angeles to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And if we have both the cause and the ability, we have the imperative to do it. And I look forward to doing that with you, Mr. Price, and the rest of our council colleagues in the coming months here in the city of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me call upon my colleague from the 13th District, Honorable Mitchell Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. This is probably the most important policy decision this council will make. And I just want to commend you, Mr. Price, for really engaging in a process that is going to be very thorough, where ideas and data and real-life experiences are going to be heard and thoroughly vetted and considered by the entire City Council. So I really want to commend everyone on the Economic Development Committee as well. I have been saying all along that for such an important policy decision, we must have a thorough process that's evidence-based and based on the day-to-day operations of real employers. What I want to make sure, and I think that probably everyone in this room supports a minimum wage increase, and you can count me among that group. We have to make sure that when we do this, that we raise the minimum wage in such a way that does not result in the unintended consequences that could be job loss, that could be a reduction in hours, that could be really negative consequences in our economy. So I am confident that through this process, where we'll have 3 hearings where we'll get to hear the diversity of opinions that are out there, that it will give us a lot to work with as a city council to decide on the best way forward. I would recommend that we not get ahead of ourselves and talk in terms of specific dollar amounts until we actually have the information in front of us and we've actually heard from the various sectors of the economy. I will also put out there for the record that I think the big elephant in every room is the lack of affordable housing in the city of Los Angeles, and the fact that the fact that people are being priced out of the neighborhoods that they know, that they love, and that they have a right to live in, no matter what the economic status. That is what I would like to see us focus on as a body, as a city council, as leadership in the city of Los Angeles, because even if we move the minimum wage up incrementally, and we will, that is not going to come close to the real problem in Los Angeles, or that, well, we have problems, and this is a real problem, but the real challenge, and that is keeping our people housed so they are not priced out of their neighborhoods. So I look forward to this conversation and many others as we decide on policies that will help lift everyone up, and I want to be part of that process. So again, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank all of you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Bonin, for your, Mr. Farrell, for your leadership and for your friendship. Appreciate your assistance. Okay, we're going to go through the cards. Again, just asking, first of all, that you respect everyone's point of view. No disruptions. We're going to give about a minute. If you can stick to a minute, I think we can go through each of these 45-plus cards. We want to give everyone a chance to speak. And let me just invite you to arrange yourself accordingly. If you can come up, please. Pastor Q, Rod McIntosh, Gilda Valdez, Felicia Stinson, Larry Foundation, Alberto Retena, and Julian Berger, in that order, please.
Good evening. My name is Pastor Q. I am from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I'm also part of the Black Jewish Justice Alliance from Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. As the pastor of the Church Without Walls on Skid Row, I support $15 an hour with enforcement. Why? Because housing is a crisis in Los Angeles. Many people who work the hardest in the city of Los Angeles cannot afford to live in the city of Los Angeles. I am reminded the prophet Amos saying in my faith tradition, this is what the Lord says. The people of Israel have sinned again and again, and I will not forget it. I will not let them go unpunished any longer. They have perverted justice by selling honest people for silver and the poor people for a pair of sandals. Basically, they're saying they were oppressing people for profit. We've done that too long. We cannot wait. Our elected officials and leaders have a moral obligation to our God to make sure that our citizens are not abused. Thank God we have some elected officials who understand that.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Roderick Mcintosh. I'm a 36-year-old Air Force veteran and father to a 9-year-old son and member of the Los Angeles Black Workers Center and current full-time student at El Camino Community College. I support the wage increase of $15.25 an hour and comprehensive enforcement of all labor laws and earned sick days. I currently work a minimum wage sales job at $10 an hour, and approximately that's about $20,000 a year. I worked in the IT field for more than a decade and as a defense contractor for the U.S. Stateside and abroad, but coming back home I was unable to find a good paying job. I've even stopped self-identifying on applications, believing that there was a barrier from me getting a job. As black workers, and this is our reality, and it shouldn't be this way. LA, basically I'm calling on the city of Los Angeles to raise a wage to $15 an hour and protect workers from discrimination by enforcing wage theft and EO laws.
Thank you. Thank you. We've been joined by another committee member, Councilwoman Nuri Martinez, also co-author of this motion to increase the minimum wage? Councilwoman?
Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Madam?
Good evening. My name is Felicia Stinson, and I am here as a representative for the United Parents at Green Dot Public Schools. I am here supporting the $15 with enforcement. I have been in the workforce for over 20 years. I have also been blessed throughout those years to have decent paying jobs where I had enough money to pay my bills and be able to enjoy some of the family activities as well. However, in the most recent years, I've been living paycheck to paycheck because the cost of living has gone up. It is unjust to many of the families that reside in our community because we barely make enough to sustain life, let alone take our children to places like the museum or local events without it being a financial strain. Research has shown that when we have stable incomes, our communities thrive. We are asking that you give us an opportunity to invest in our families and improve the quality of life by raising the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour for hardworking citizens in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Larry Foundation. I'm Director of Community Engagement at Green Dot Public Schools. We operate 21 public schools in Southern California, most of the city of Los Angeles. 76% of our parents make less than $13.25 an hour, and 84% make less than $15 an hour. We are proud to be a fully unionized organization. Both our teachers and our classified employees are union members. We have nearly 1,000 employees in Southern California. Some of you, Chairperson Price and others, joined us on December 13th at the United Parents Assembly. Ms. Stinson, who just spoke, is one of the leaders of that organization. We, as Green Dot, raised our minimum wage then by a memorandum of understanding with our classified union to $15. That raise took effect at the very next pay period on January 10th, 2015. We now pay all our employees here $15 an hour or more. And we ask that our hardworking parents get that same benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, every clap counts, so
Good evening.
be conservative, please.
My name is Gilda Valdez. I am the Chief of Staff for SEIU Local 7-1 Public Employees. But I'm also here on behalf of the fast food workers, the Fight for 15. I'm the president for the Fight for 15. I think you know that we have started the campaign across the country and we targeted McDonald's, okay? When you stop and think that 50% of this country is under $15 an hour, what do our youth have to look forward to? The dream that once existed, that people would go to college, young people would go to college, come out, and get a good paying job, that is not there anymore. That dream doesn't exist. We have professors who make less than $15 an hour and work for colleges, the same people who are teaching our youth. I actually was here in 1965, and I saw the buildings burning down in Watts. I lived here. And then in 1992 again. The bottom line is the working people of this community need good paying jobs so that they could only have to work one job, not two jobs, not three jobs. They need to take care of their families. And we need our city to step up and provide 15 and enforcement for our families and our communities. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Alberto Retana. I'm the Executive Vice President of Community Coalition, and I'm here supporting $15 with enforcement. Last summer, our CEO and President, and now City Councilman-elect of the great 8th Council District, Marquise Ayers Dawson, was moved by the efforts of the LAUSD classified employees, food workers, and labor movement's Fight for 15 that he raised the wage of our street action team from $13 to $15 an hour. because he understood that as a social justice organization, we must match our values with our practice. That when we pay our employees what they deserve, it's an important step to ensuring dignity and respect not only in the workplace, but in our city. While we applaud Economic Roundtable's very critical economic study that supports our plan, I want to revisit what I believe is the best argument that we have today, which is our moral and civic obligation to build a city where people make a decent living, where a zip code does not trap you into poverty, and where greed does not defeat promise and opportunity. Our plan for $15 an hour enforcement and sick pay days is what we need right now, not tomorrow. If we can move forward as a nonprofit in South Los Angeles, we believe our city can do the same. It's beautiful that we can hang up the portraits of Dr. King and speak to his speeches, but we need to follow his path by our words and our actions, and we hope that you stand by his legacy and support this plan. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Julian Berger, and I live at 1404 West Cruces Street in Wilmington, California. I'm the president of the Progressive Democratic Club in the Los Angeles Harbor area. At this point, I would normally say that as an identification, but in this case, last December, my Democratic Club basically endorsed the idea of the mayor's increase in minimum wage platform with a two-step tier program. It's amazing that it takes a city, not a state, not a federal government, to actually increase the minimum wage. I applaud all of the people who are involved in this process, who basically see the value in this. It looks like we have actually got to jump on the horse and run forward with it, because it's not going to come from a higher authority. So I applaud Councilmember Price, Councilmember Martinez, Councilmember Bonin over there. Love that guy. Okay. You know what I mean? We got history. And everything else. So look, thanks very much for your time. You have a good evening, okay? Yeah.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Belinda Nogués. Belinda Nogués.
Good evening, my name is Melina Gomez.
Nogués.
Nogués. Okay.
Es un placer y un honor estar aquí y vengo porque he estado aquí desde 1990 y he sido papá y mamá.
It's a pleasure for me to be here because I've been here from 1990. I've been a mom and dad.
Y estoy aquí para poder reclamar el $15 la hora porque he trabajado de housekeeping, he trabajado como descargando tráiler, trabajos pesados de hombres y siempre me han pagado el mínimo.
I'm here to support the $15 an hour increase because I've always been, housekeeping, and also unloading trailers.
Me han tocado trabajos de hombres porque es la necesidad que he tenido en mi vida y por eso es que estoy aquí y quisiera pedirles ese favor, que $15, porque ya es justo que nosotros como seres humanos y como trabajadores y como luchadores que somos, que estamos en este país para trabajar, tengamos ese derecho de $15.
So I'm here to support and ask you that you do increase that $15 an hour because I've been having to work and it's just, we need that.
Yes. Tengo 4 hijos, 2 de ellos están en la universidad, uno está en Castellon Beach y el otro está en Chico y me llena de mucho orgullo que estén aportando profesionales para este país, para un futuro mejor. Y le doy gracias a Dios porque he tenido esa oportunidad que mis hijos estén en la universidad y mis otros hijos trabajando. Gracias.
I have 2 children in university right now that I'm supporting, and I'm very glad, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Y para conclusión, solo quiero decirles que tengan un poquito de misericordia para nosotros, porque hemos trabajado duro y no venimos aquí a tener todo fácil. Sé que es difícil y sabemos que ustedes tienen el poder en sus manos. Gracias.
Thank you.
And I just hope that you have a little pity on us or actually to understand us because we've been working here, and thank you.
Okay. Before we have our next group of speakers, let me just again give a shout out to WLCAC for their hospitality this evening. Let's give it up. We appreciate And Councilmember Joe Buciano is not with us, but his deputy, John Jones, is with us. John's in the back. All right. Again, thank you, John. Okay, next group of speakers, please line up. Ruben Gonzalez, David English, George Daoud, Nicole Shahinian, Randy Clement, and Wendy Butts, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilwoman Martinez. My name is Ruben Gonzalez. I'm here on behalf of the LA Area Chamber of Commerce. We don't disagree with the goal.
A little closer.
Sorry. We don't disagree with the goal of trying to do something to raise the working poor and raise wages in the city of LA. The problem isn't the goal, the problem is the tool before us. When it doesn't take into account the fact that you have competitive disadvantages when you do this at a city level, then it's going to cause job loss and other challenges to businesses, especially small businesses. When you can literally have a restaurant on one side of Western Avenue, San Pedro, that has to pay this higher wage, and directly across that same street in Torrance, a restaurant does not have to pay that same wage, does not face a 50 to 70% increase in labor costs over 3 or 5 years, then that restaurant in Los Angeles cannot raise its prices high enough to absorb this cost. It's simple math. You have to take that into account, because if you don't, then that restaurateur or that retail owner or whatever that business is that can't compete with that competitor across the street is going to have to cut jobs, is going to have to cut the hours of their workers, is going to have to scale back benefits to afford the wages, or is going to have to close up their shop and move across the street and open up in Torrance. That's a reality here in CD15. We need to look at a much longer extension and phase-in than has been proposed if you're going to consider wage increases of this kind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Please, let's give every speaker the courtesy they deserve, please. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm David England with the LA County Business Federation, BizFed, and our members represent 88,000 employers here in the city of Los Angeles. We have a number of concerns about the proposal. We share the goal to lift people out of poverty. Our biggest concern is that this will not actually achieve that goal, because even at $15 an hour working full-time, you're still earning a wage that's below the poverty line. So we think that a better solution would be for council to focus on creating the conditions that promote good-paying middle-class jobs that can actually lift people out of poverty and lift families out of poverty. Two specific concerns that I want to address tonight is a concern that this will raise teen unemployment. LA is a national leader in teen unemployment, and a lower wage scale is needed for teenage employees to help ensure they're not locked out of jobs that are an on-ramp to the skills they need to be effective wage earners. And another concern is that this will harm nonprofits that provide critical human services. We have a number of nonprofits that do job training and placement for low-income populations. This proposal would force them to cut back on the services they provide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council members, I'm here representing local, independent, family, and minority-owned restaurants, not fast food chains. We support an increase in wages when done correctly. We support total compensation, and we've provided a solution. We're on the same side. Based on our industry's economic model, which was created before we were even born, we will be unfairly targeted by a measure that will have the opposite of its intended effect. Tips act, talk, and walk like a wage, and we even pay payroll taxes on them. It's time to treat them as such. It's very noteworthy to see that no workers from our independent restaurants are at these hearings for the obvious reason that those paid the minimum wage are taking home much, much more at our types of businesses. Academics that sit on pristine campuses are not in the hot kitchens with all of us and do not see the reality that we face every day. They don't know the weight of our expenses and the hours we work. We can all come to your offices and share the microeconomic side of things. I urge the City Council to offer incentives to developers to build low-income housing, of which without any increase in the wage would be weakened. We're here to help you and support you. Please do the math and help us do the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Nicole Shahanian with the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. We were one of the very first business organizations to support the mayor's wage proposal increase at $13.25, but it needs to be done in a way that keeps our small businesses sustainable and grows our economy and local job base. We've previously submitted a letter outlining our concerns and suggested modifications to the mayor's proposal. We're joined here tonight by several of our Los Angeles small business owners and restaurateurs. I implore you to listen to their concerns that this proposal as is goes too far, too fast for some of our smaller businesses to keep up. We need to phase in this over a longer period of time to allow our small businesses to adjust and to secure the jobs of those already employed there. And we have to address the issues surrounding tipped wage earners. Although we know this is a state issue, it is nonetheless a very real impact on the restaurant industry that cannot be ignored. Total compensation needs to be addressed so we can ensure more equitable wage rates for all of our restaurant employees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, how are you? My name is Randy Clement, and happy to be here. I'm here to keep LA cooking, and just to say that I'm a small business owner, and I am 100,000 million in support of raising the minimum wage, 100%. But the thing about that is that we want to make sure we raise that in a responsible way. A lot of people that work at the restaurants here in Los Angeles in the front of the house make far more than the minimum wage currently is or currently would be with this proposal. A lot of people that work in restaurants on the tipped employee side make $30, $40, $50, $60 an hour. And we want to make sure that this wage is raised in a responsible way to get to the monies to the people that truly need it, the people that are working in the kitchens, the back of the house, and not just to kind of increase the overall inequality that currently exists in the restaurant system. So we support the increase in minimum wage, and we want to make sure that the money gets to where it needs to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairperson Price and council members, my name is Wendy Butts. I'm the CEO of the Los Angeles Conservation Corps. Today I'm speaking on behalf of a partnership with my colleagues from Homeboy Industries and Chrysalis. All of us are focused on lifting our program participants out of poverty. Each of our programs serves members of the community that have significant barriers to education and employment. Meaningful employment is the way out of poverty for them, and that's why we support a pathway to a higher minimum wage, and specifically the objectives of the mayor's proposal. You are probably aware of a letter sent to you by Councilman Blumenfield, Fuentes, and Farrell, which referenced issues with the current proposal and provided options for solutions, including one for transitional jobs programs. We urge you to review their recommendations. Each of our 501c3 nonprofit organizations operates transitional jobs programs. These programs provide limited-term job training to disconnected youth and adults with barriers to economic advancement due to limited educational attainment, mental health challenges, homelessness, and/or criminal backgrounds. Our programs invest significant resources to help prepare program participants for the transition to permanent employment. The cost of these additional resources is between $4 and $7 per hour and is funded from government and/or philanthropic support. These additional resources combined with the state minimum wage demonstrate that we are investing much more than the proposed citywide wage increase. The impact of a rapid and large increase to the minimum wage on our programs would be significant. We would be forced to reduce the number of program participants that we serve. The opposite of what all of us want to achieve. We ask that as you craft the legislation to implement a citywide minimum wage ordinance, give special consideration to the impact of this policy on transitional jobs programs. It's important to note that our program participants will continue to earn the state minimum wage and that we are not asking for an exemption for staff. Thank you for your consideration of our position in this matter.
Thank you. Next up, Sandra McNeil, George Torres, Georgina Serrano, John London, Ron Hassan, Larry Aubrey, and Tim McDaniel.
Good evening, council members. Sandra McNeil, Executive Director of Trust South LA, a member-controlled community land trust. I'm here supporting 15 with enforcement. Let me tell you how desperately we need these increased wages. As of mid-2014, USC's Kasdan multifamily forecast determined average rent in LA County to be $1,716 a month. At $10 an hour, it takes 3 1/3 full-time workers, and that's folks working full-time who aren't taking sick leave and aren't having their wages stolen from them to pay this rent without being rent burdened. At $13.25 an hour, it still takes 2.5 workers for the household to pay the rent. At $15 an hour, we finally get to 2 full-time workers together being able to pay average rent. We appreciate that the Beacon Economic Study highlights the need for increased affordable housing production. However, we disagree that housing production is the full solution. In LA, a city with a majority of renters and the nation's most unaffordable place to live, we must pair effective housing preservation and production policies with higher wages, paid sick leave, and protection against wage theft. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Georgina Serrano. I'm here supporting the $15 with enforcement. I earned $5.25 per hour when the minimum wage was $8 something. So I work in healthcare services as an outreach worker. My job required a certain number of patients and work 8 hours per day. But wherever they sign me in out, only 6 hours daily consistently. When I complain, the boss says, well, take it or leave it. That's what it is. So I want to stay because I need the money, but it's so injustice in my eyes. So I couldn't pay the rent, so I have to give out all my property, furniture, and move out with my son and I with a friend far away. Please pass this law to prevent wages stolen from us. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, council members, Chairman Price. I'm here to support a minimum wage at $15 with enforcement. My name is John London. I'm 45 years old. I'm a lifelong resident of the 8th and 9th District, and I'm a member of Trust South LA. I worked for years as a security guard at $10 an hour and barely able to support my family, had to move from apartment to apartment without rent control. I didn't even have time to even worry about that stuff. I had a crisis one time. The payroll was stolen from my job, and they didn't even cover the employees. So I ended up leaving the job, being without a job, and getting an eviction on my permanent record. And I support the minimum wage. I beg you, I plead you, I urge you to please raise the minimum wage. We go out and vote for you. We got your back. Please have our backs.
Thank you.
My name is Ron Hassan, and I'm the area director for the NAACP. I represent 10 branches across Los Angeles County. I first would like to thank all of you for your commitment in working with the citizens of Los Angeles and your commitment to try and bring about a $15 an hour wage for all citizens in Los Angeles. But please not forget that there is also a need for sick leave for these individuals that's going to be working, so that they have sick leaves to go along with it, and also consideration for the Office of Labor Standards, which is also needed because we need to ensure that all of our population has an opportunity at getting good paying jobs. So it's important that we look at these other issues, sick leave, as well as an Office of Labor Standards, so that we can improve the quality of life for all citizens living in Los Angeles, so that all of us can go out and shop and do the things to make this the right city, a rightful city for all of us in the city of Los Angeles. Thank you, and continue with your commitment.
Thank you.
My name is Larry Aubrey. I'm co-chair of the Black Community, Clergy, and Labor Alliance. It's BCCLA. The wage and job crisis is devastating, but especially acute for black workers, half of whom in Los Angeles County are unemployed or underemployed. Black workers also have an especially hard time finding jobs, a stable place to live, and even to put food on the table, largely due to discrimination. BCCLA supports the call to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, $15, not $13.25. Provide sick leave and enforce all labor laws for quality jobs, justice, and more importantly, as importantly, dignity. Also, Los Angeles needs an Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement dedicated to following through on pro-worker legislation and city policy with a mandate to protect and enforce anti-discrimination laws. Monitoring must include community-based worker organizations. Finally, BCCLA believes community members and organized labor, when united, can end the job crisis, especially for black workers. Actually, $5 an hour is smart, but more importantly, it's right, it's ethical, and it's right.
Thank you.
Hello, I am here supporting $15 an hour with enforcement. My name is Tim McDaniel Jr. I'm a proud member of the Watts Neighborhood Council and ACE. The problem is that we have well-bodied individuals that can contribute to the workforce deciding not to work because they earn more being unemployed than they would if they took a job at earning the current minimum wages. This year is the 50th year since the historic Watts Rebellion of 1965, and we have been working tirelessly as on-the-ground leaders to stabilize conditions through improved community coordination and adopting economic development initiatives that can restore the dignity in our Watts community, investments in job training programs, and a dignified wage. I'm here to advocate on behalf of the over 40,000 stakeholders of Watts to put an end to slave wages and to effectively reduce the financial vulnerabilities within our Watts community. Because over 60% of households in Watts lives in poverty and rely on public assistance programs just to survive. I'm going to repeat that. Over 60% of households in Watts lives in poverty and rely on public assistance programs just to survive. That's not the American way, and it shouldn't be Los Angeles way, and we in Watts will not waver until dignity is restored, because if not now, when? The answer is before you, and I pray a solution is implemented sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, please, Jeremy Berg, Alan Shulman, Betty Fraser, Fausto Hernandez, Marcos Sanchez, Diane Middleton, and Joe Turner, please, in that order.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jeremy Berg, and I'm the president and owner of A&A Wiping Cloth. To be frank, the proposal to raise minimum wage to $13.25 or higher is currently forcing me to consider moving my business outside of the city of Los Angeles or laying off a sizable portion of my dedicated workforce and outsource manufacturing to other companies outside the city limits. A&A Wiping Cloth is a small family-owned business that was started in Boyle Heights in the 1940s by my grandfather. For over 70 years, we have been the leading recycler of linen discards and textiles in Southern California. Each year, we purchase and recycle over 7 million pounds of unwanted linen discards and over 4 million pounds of unwanted used clothing. By finding new homes for torn and stained linens, we are thereby extending the life cycle of these textiles and diverting them from landfills and incinerators. We are a small company with only 40 employees, 28 of which are minimum wage. These are generally young men and women simply looking for starting jobs. We are without a doubt a penny business, not a nickel and dime business, but a penny business. Our profit margins are extremely thin. My options are moving. If I could make some requests, it would be to exclude small businesses with under 50 employees. If that cannot be done, somehow go easy with the increase, extend the implementation schedule, or perhaps go with different rates for different size businesses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening. My name is Alan Shulman. I'm a independent restaurant owner in Culver City. We completely, as an independent restaurant community, we completely endorse increasing the minimum wage. We completely support $15 an hour. But without considering the tip scenario into the equation, it's not a sustainable model. We employ a tremendous amount of people in the city, and we feed a lot of people in the city every day. For the first time in 7 years that I've been in business, 100% of my payroll increase came from the front of the house. The front of the house represents the highest paid individuals in the restaurant. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. With the money, you deal with the money, put the money where the money belongs. There is nobody in my restaurant, nobody in any of my friends' restaurants that employ anybody anywhere near the minimum wage level. We're very supportive of labor. Please consider the tips into the equation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm Betty Fraser, and I live and own a small restaurant in Hollywood. I've had it for 14 years, and we have 35 employees who work with us, and 75% of them have worked with us for 7 years or more. We in the local restaurant business are for wage equality, But if the minimum wage goes to $15.25 an hour without taking tips and total compensation into consideration, then I will have to let go of 30% of my staff. There's just not enough money to go around, and I know my customers, they will not pay $20 for a hamburger. If we have to pay payroll taxes on tips because the state says that they are wages, then they need to be counted because tips are wages. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes.
Good evening.
Mi nombre es Marco Sánchez.
My name is Marco Sanchez.
Soy miembro de ACE y estoy aquí para apoyar el sueldo mínimo de a 15 por lo menos la hora.
I am a member of ACE, and I'm here to support the minimum wage increase of at least $15 per hour.
Vivo en la ciudad de Los Ángeles, en la 33 y Hooper Street, en el Distrito 9.
I live in the city of Los Angeles at 33 and Hooper Street in District 9.
Yo trabajo para una compañía de costura. Por 10 años he trabajado ahí, lo cual siempre he ganado el mínimo de a $9 la hora.
I work for a sewing company that I worked for 10 years, and I've always worked there and earned $9 an hour.
Por lo cual el salario de ahora no nos alcanza para pagar una renta de un cuarto que está de a 900 a 1,100 por mes.
So our earnings is not enough to pay a rent. It's it's going for 900 to 1,100.
Mi familia y mi hijo viven conmigo. Mi esposa también trabaja, lo cual también ella gana el sueldo mínimo. Pero también ella trabajó para una compañía en la cual la hacían trabajar 10 horas y la hacían ponchar tarjeta como que si trabajara 8 horas.
My daughter and my wife live with me. She also works in the sewing company, and she was also forced to work more than 10 hours.
Esperamos que la ciudad de Los Ángeles haga algo para aumentar el sueldo mínimo y también tome medidas para castigar a las compañías que roban los sueldos. Muchas gracias.
Also, we hope that the city of Los Angeles takes some measures to raise the minimum wage and also punishes those people that abuse other people.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, councilmen, staff, brothers and sisters. My name is Diane Middleton. I live in San Pedro. I just retired after 40 years as an attorney representing longshoremen and shipyard workers. I am here in support of $15 an hour and enforcement. I've served the city as a housing authority commissioner for 5 years. 15 years ago, I started the Diane Middleton Foundation to support labor and community organizing. I specifically want to address the question of wage theft. Most people don't know what it is. Wage theft is when a worker goes in and has to clock in after working an hour off the clock. Wage theft is people who cannot receive the minimum wage. It's a struggle for many workers in LA to even get the wages that they have earned. We need wage theft provisions. I strongly support every part of this bill, but we have to do something about the $3.6 million per day that is being stolen from workers in our city. Do something about it. Put people to work and the enforcement division. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I'm here in supporting 15 with enforcement. My name is Joseph Turner. I have lived in Watts since I was 14. Because of jobs in the neighborhood do not pay enough to live, I have to go outside of LA to get a job in order to support my family. Most of my friends and family who live in the neighborhood work on minimum wages, and even working full-time jobs, they still do not bring enough money home to pay the rent and bills. I have seen firsthand of how this kind of poverty creates crime and destroys communities. If jobs in the neighborhood pays at least $15 an hour, we would lift a lot of our friends and families out of poverty, and it would help us create a safer and healthier community here in Watts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Fausto Hernández García. Vengo del sur de Los Ángeles. Tengo 8 años de como carguachero.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Fausto Hernandez. I am a resident of South LA, and I've worked in the car wash industry for 8 years.
Ya no queremos que pase esto, que la comunidad sepa. Nosotros queremos ya un salario justo para que no haya robo de salario, que sea de 15 la hora.
So we want a minimum wage of $15 an hour because we want wage theft to stop. We don't want our communities to suffer from it any longer.
Porque yo he trabajado de 10 horas a 9 y me han pagado nada más 3 horas. Por eso vengo aquí para exponer lo que me está pasando, para que mi familia viva bien.
I've worked at times from 9 to 10 hours and only got paid for 3. And that's why I'm here tonight, because I want my family to have a better life.
Porque mi familia, ahora sí que lo que ganamos no nos alcanza ni para la renta, ni para la comida. Por eso queremos un salario justo, que ya sea de 15 la hora.
Because with what we earn, what I earn now and my family members earn, it's not enough to pay the rent. So that's why we're asking for $15 an hour, because it's what's just.
Para que la comunidad sepa, y gracias por todo.
So the community can know, and thank you for everything.
Thank you. Gracias.
Good evening, council members, and thank you for allowing our comments. My name is Belinda Reeser, and I've worked in the entertainment industry here in Los Angeles for 14 years, and 6 of which were at a major studio. I'm a member of the LA Black Workers Center, and I support the $15 minimum wage, earned sick days, and enforcement of all labor laws policies. My own story is that I experienced racial discrimination at the hands of my employer, working undertitled and underpaid for over 2 years, and being passed up for promotions by persons of other races with less experience, less education, or less seniority than I had. This happened similarly to another coworker in the same department, and it was happening throughout the company and across the country. Systemic racial discrimination is an American reality, and I fought it. I filed a DFEH and took a year to partially investigate my case, or they did, and because the standard of proof was so high, the probability of getting justice for me was very low. Therefore, we're always raised to believe that if we work doubly hard, the opportunity would meet us halfway, but seldom is that the case for our communities. So because of that, I'm asking and urging the city of LA to raise the wage to $15 an hour, protect workers by enforcing labor laws, including equal employment and opportunity. Let's raise the floor for all LA workers. And I'd like to present the community with petitions on behalf of the Black Workers Center.
Well, thank you very much. Next up, we've got Tim Watkins, Tiffany Johnson, Maria Mejares, Dwayne Callaway, Omar Perez, Rosemarie Molina, and Sherry Lear, please.
Good evening, and just for the record, thank you, Councilman Price, for acknowledging WLCAC. We're your host tonight. We're happy that this is happening here because you're sitting at the hypercenter of the area of greatest need in the city. The county reports on this every couple of years, and every couple of years reaffirm that infant mortality rates in this part of the county are at some of the highest rates in the nation, that unemployment, poor housing, poor health, inadequate access to good food, safe food, all of those things are what we live with here. And what we're talking about with the raising of the minimum wage addresses the quality of life issue that we desperately need. So I'm in full support of the 15 with enforcement, but I just want to encourage you to dig deep in the analytical side of this, because a lot of people in this area don't have boats. A lot of people in this area have boats that have too many holes in them, and the rising tide, should float all boats, but all boats aren't going to float in this. So I'm really concerned about our people
and want you to dig deep to determine how we're going to deal with folks that are homeless, folks that are unemployable, folks that are suffering the indignity of having to live on the street as this unfolds. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your hospitality this evening.
Good evening, Councilmember. My name is Tiffany Johnson. I am Associate Director for New Wave Life Reentry Project. I'm here to support the increase of minimum wage to $15 an hour, mainly because it's the right thing to do. So we work with women who are coming home from prisons and jails, and they're starting their lives all over again. So they have the first discrimination of they're women. The second discrimination is they're just coming back into society. The third discrimination is it's going to be equally double for them, harder for them to get a job, and then they have to get a job under pay just to survive. You cannot survive off the minimum wage today. You know, I have a daughter who's 25 years old with a 6-year-old grandson living with me because she cannot afford to move out on her own. You know, she's working 2 and 3 jobs, but still cannot afford to meet the Los Angeles apartment rate. So minimum wage is the right and smart thing to do, and it supports our community. So if we give a little, then our community would give a little. So I just want to say I am all in favor for it, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Mi nombre es María Mijares.
My name is Maria Mijares.
Soy miembro de ACE.
I am a member of ACE.
Estoy aquí para pedirles a los concejales que pongan un mínimo por lo menos de $15.
I'm here to request or actually ask for the council members to increase the minimum wage to at least $15 per hour.
Vivo aquí en el sur de Los Ángeles.
I live here in the south of Los Angeles.
Con mi esposo y mis hijos.
My husband and my children.
Trabajo limpiando el Museo de Arte por 11 años.
I work cleaning the museum or the LA Museum of Arts for 11 years.
Y mi sueldo es de $10.
And my wage is $10 an hour.
Eso no es suficiente para pagar mis deudas, biles, todos.
And that's not enough to pay my debts, my bills, and all of that.
Y las dificultades pues que he tenido, o quizás todas las familias hemos tenido.
And also the difficulties that I've had, and possibly all the different families have had.
Trabajar doble turno para poder sacar adelante a la familia.
Of having to work 2 shifts, or in order to support
y a la vez abandonarlos porque no pueden estar con ellos.
And also to leave them behind because you can't be with him.
Y con el mínimo pues ya habría un poco de tiempo para estar con la familia, los hijos, el esposo.
Increasing the minimum, there would be a little bit more time to be with the family, their husband and children.
Y lo primero que haría con el aumento, que espero que nos lo den.
And the first thing that I would do with the increase that I would hope that you would grant it to us.
Ayudar a mi último hijo que está ahorita en el colegio.
Would be to help my last child that's right now in college.
Y pues pagar mis biles.
And also to pay my bills.
Y creo que hace falta ese aumento urgentemente para todos porque hay muchas familias que no viven honestamente.
And I believe that is something that we urgently need, that increase in wages, because there are families that aren't making an honest living or actually earning an honest wage.
Como han dicho muchos compañeros, la renta está por los cielos.
A lot of my or partners have said rents are very high.
La comida, no se
high.
diga.
And the food, it's more.
Todo está
and so
muy caro.
Everything is very expensive.
Yeah. Y creo que hace falta, como les digo, los $15.
Okay, thank you.
We really need to have the $15 increasing.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, council members. I'm here supporting 15 with enforcement.
A little closer to the microphone, sir.
Okay. My name is Dwayne Callaway, and I work for Huda Maki, a paper's good producer in Commerce, California. Even though I live in Watts and have lived here for 37 years, I have to commute outside the city to find work that pays a wage I can afford to live on. Many of my co-workers also commute from Los Angeles because jobs in our neighborhoods do not pay enough to live on. If we had a minimum wage of $15 an hour, it would mean more people like me wouldn't have to commute outside Los Angeles to find work. We need $15 an hour, wage enforcement, and pay sick. Thank you.
And so where do you say you're commuting to? Where's your job?
Commerce.
Commerce?
Commerce,
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Rosemary Molina. I'm here from CD9. I work with the Clean Car Wash campaign. I'm the strategic director, and I'm the lead organizer for the LA Raise the Wage campaign. We have over 240 organizations right now supporting 1525 and enforcement, and I'm here to do the same. We have one chance to lift LA workers and families out of poverty, and we need to make sure that it's a comprehensive policy. I'm here today to address the comments about tipped employees that have been happening at the recent hearings. Car wash workers, many of them are tipped workers. And I don't know if you folks have seen car wash workers at car washes lately, but they're not living lavish lifestyles, and they rely on a minimum wage that is going to be $15.25. Also, I don't want people to get confused. We have one wage for every worker in California, and it would be illegal to have a different tipped wage in Los Angeles. It would be against Labor Code 351, so we need to keep that in mind. We need to lift up all workers together. We do not need to differentiate between wages. We need one wage, and we need that for everybody now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Lear, and I'm a small business owner, and I'm here to support raising the minimum wage to $15.25 an hour, a wage theft protection, as well as paid sick days for all workers. First of all, I just want to make a comment regarding the public commentary by someone who came here from the LA Chamber of Commerce. I live in San Pedro. On Western Avenue, San Pedro, the other side of Western Avenue on San Pedro is Rancho Palos Verdes, not Torrance. I can guarantee you that all the workers in Rancho Palos Verdes are making at least $15 an hour. I pay my employees over $15 an hour. I give them paid sick days. I give them paid vacation. I employ a single mother who's supporting her children by herself, and I pay her a living wage. That's what I, as a business person, choose to do. I pay her before I pay myself. I support a living wage. I believe that a living wage for all of Los Angeles will support economic growth for the working people, not just growth of corporate profits, which are higher than they ever have been. I also am here to support women. Women make up 2/3 of the minimum wage workers. In California, white women earn about 84 cents to the dollar for a man. It is much worse for my sisters of color. African American women make 63.4 cents per dollar. Hispanic women in California make only 43 cents to the dollar for a man in California, and we are better than a lot of states on these numbers. That is terrifying. Raising the minimum wage is going to help address this problem. Paid sick days is something that is absolutely important. Women who have sick children should not have to come into work and leave their child at home by themselves. People who are handling food, who are waiting on people, should not have to make the choice of taking care of themselves versus going to work to earn money. LA is the wage theft capital of the nation. We need to address that. 1/3 of women in the United States either live in poverty or on the brink of poverty. We have many women who are homeless because they can't afford a place to live and are escaping domestic violence. Raising the minimum wage will help women. It will help people of color. I stand for that with every fiber of my being.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
I am Lawrence Foy. My name is Lawrence Foy. I'm the Policy Director for New Way of Life Reentry Project. I'm also a university and seminary trained theologian and social ethicist. The proposed raise in minimum wage, as put forth by Honorable current Price and Honorable Mike Bonham, is really about dignity. It's about bestowing dignity to people who work hard, play by the rules, demonstrate loyalty to their employers, but in turn they are woefully and inadequately compensated. The current minimum wage standards only perpetuate poverty and impoverishment. Raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour is a declaration to end poverty in Los Angeles. Perhaps our efforts here in Los Angeles will rekindle a nationwide war on poverty, the one that was started in the 60s under the Johnson administration, but was undercut by the war in Vietnam and further prolonged by the war on drugs, aka the war on people of color. I encourage you to pass the minimum wage.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Kirby Washington. I also am in the entertainment industry. I've been employed in that industry for 27 years. Now, my union is the Cinematographers Guild. It's less than 2% black, and it's been that way for the last 2 decades. We just completed a survey that shows that 62% of members who complain about harassment and discrimination are dissatisfied with the response from the union. I think we need some EEO oversight of the film industry. We've just quadrupled the tax credits we're giving to the industry, yet there's no look at how we're parsing out these California jobs along racial lines. Something must be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Joseph Centimo, Carolyn Stein, Eric Martin, David Dickerson, Gispin Miramonte, Oscar Sanchez, John Frank Hernandez. In that order, please.
Hi. We came here today to let you know we support an increase to the minimum wage, but there must be an exception for tipped employees. We operate 4 independent restaurants in downtown Los Angeles. As a small business which employs 185 people, we run at extremely small margins. Our labor costs are 40% of our sales. An increase in the wage across the board would make it difficult to keep our staff intact, much less stay open. The biggest issue at stake here is the difference between tipped and non-tipped employees. Dishwashers and cooks in our restaurants make between $11 and $15 an hour. We believe in a living wage. However, what these bills fail to acknowledge is the fact that our tipped employees currently make $20 to $50 an hour. Because California state law does not recognize tips as wages, the city would be giving up to a $6 raise to employees already making $50 an hour. This would put us out of business. The perfect solution for a small business like ours would be to adopt a total compensation plan that would account for tips. Tipped employees would make a lower minimum wage and would meet wage requirements through tips or their employers. We appreciate the opportunity to plead our case so that the council can understand the impact this move will have on businesses like ours. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Stein. I'm an independent restaurateur here in Los Angeles. I want to start by saying that I hear what everybody's saying here, and I agree that there needs to be an increase to the minimum wage. $9 an hour is not livable. But it needs to be done thoughtfully. As a member of this independent restaurant community, one that has literally just eked through a devastating recession, this industry really needs to be heard. At issue is the fact that the restaurant industry in LA cannot survive without an accommodation for tipped employees. Those who with tips are making well over the proposed minimum wage. We have 2 basic types of employees in our businesses. Back of the house, who most of us are already paying well over minimum wage and who do not receive tips, and the front of the house, tipped employees who make up the majority of our workforce. There's a real misconception that restaurants operate with huge profits. The fact is that it's just not true, and we can't absorb a 60% plus increase in our wages. Profits for a restaurant, if they're at 5% net at the end of the year, that's really successful, and that's scary. It's not a coincidence that other states like Washington, New York, and others have accommodations for tipped employees. It's because those states recognize the situation that we're in. We're not trying to save money. We're trying to save our businesses and save our employees' jobs. I'm afraid for the over 300 people that I employ and work with daily, and the thousands in the LA restaurant industry as a whole. So please make tips count, slow down, and consider this as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilperson Price, Councilperson Martinez, and fellow council members, thank you for hearing me today. My name is Eric Martin. I represent Rave Theaters out of Baldwin Hills. We also support the minimum wage increase with consideration. At many theaters, the overwhelming majority of our employees are students working part-time. Teens and young adults are the primary workforce in theaters. They may only be looking for a job in the summer or have to quit their school schedule because of the rigorous schedules they will hold as a member of the staff. With young employees, there are always possibilities that their social life distractions take priority over the Saturday night shift, and they simply don't show up. This is a reality to our staffing. At the proposed minimum wage price point, it is possible that theaters will have to find ways to cut costs by replacing box office employees, ticket takers, concession sales employees with automatic ticket dispensers, ticket readers, and concession vending machines. Employees that are reliable, fully trained, and stay on the job for the extended period of time are valuable and well worth the proposed minimum wage. It is difficult to maintain sustained business while paying $15 per hour to each employee in training and whatever is developing to their most proficient, productive positions. We are requesting a training period exemption to increase minimum wage for the first 6 to 9 months of an employee's time on the job. I would also like to submit a letter to the clerk from NATO, National Association of Theater Owners, on behalf of theater operators in Los Angeles.
Okay, great. We'd like to see that. Just send it over to the officer. All right, thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Hi, Council. You guys having a good evening?
So far.
A lot has already been said about restaurant and small business owners as restaurateurs. I am a proponent and an advocate of the minimum wage increase. I believe that it is going to create a more robust middle class. That's good for my industry. I'm all for it. But tip consideration has to be thought of in this whole process, because when I only owned one restaurant as a mom and pop operator, half of my tipped employees made more money than I did, and I worked hard to build a second restaurant. And points that haven't been made is that half of my staff are between 20 and 30 years old, and at a time when the restaurant industry as a whole is moving towards what's called fast casual, or the Chipotle model, where there are no servers, that's 20 to 30-year-olds who are in college. A lot of my employees are students, and they could very well be out of a job if I can't sustain my business, and other restaurateurs like these guys can't sustain the restaurant. So it's 20 to 30-year-olds who are potentially losing their jobs, but I am all for minimum wage increase for those who are not tipped employees. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Sir, what's your name?
David.
Buenas noches a todo el concejal de Los Ángeles.
Good evening to all the council members of Los Angeles.
Esta noche vengo acá para apoyar que queremos que nos suban el sueldo mínimo.
Tonight here, I'm here to support the raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
Porque yo tengo 14 años de estar acá en Los Ángeles.
I've been in Los Angeles for 14 years now.
He trabajado acá en el sur de Los Ángeles como carguachero.
I've worked in South Central for the last as a car wash worker.
Y antes yo trabajaba 10 horas y me pagaban 4 horas.
And before, I used to work 10 hours, and I used to get paid for 4 of those hours.
Y de toda mi familia, yo soy el único que estoy acá y yo soy el que estoy encargado de mantener a mis padres, a mis hermanos.
And of all my family members, I'm the only one who's here and the one who's responsible for taking care of my family back at home.
Y ganando a $9 la hora no me alcanza ni para pagar mi renta, con más para mantener a mi familia.
And $9 an hour isn't nearly enough to pay my rent and not enough to even, support my family.
Por eso esta noche le pido a todo el concejal que se ponga en nuestros zapatos
So I ask tonight that the council members put themselves in our shoes
y que se toquen el corazón y que nos suban el sueldo mínimo a $15 la hora, porque sí se puede.
and I hope that you can touch your hearts and raise our wage to 15 because we can do it. Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Crispín Gerardo, vengo respaldando la industria de car wash, pero vengo sobre el apoyo de los $15 el mínimo.
Hi, good evening. My name is Crispin Miramontes. I'm here representing the car wash industry, and I'm here to propose $15 as a minimum wage.
Para así estar un poco más cómodo para la familia, pero también apoyado por el esfuerzo de no robar el salario, porque si no existe el alto de robo de salario, de nada serviría el 15 dólares el mínimo.
So for 15 would mean for my family to live more comfortably, and I also ask for the enforcement because it wouldn't work if the wage theft would continue, and it wouldn't work unless there's enforcement.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is John Frank Hernandez, and I am the CEO of Hernandez Holcomb and Associates. I'm here supporting $15 with enforcement. Yes, I said that correctly. As many of you may not know, 83% of affected workers are people of color. As a male of color, I say this: let us end the income disparity. Yes, let us end the income gap. Let us end the income segregation that we have here in the city. So yes, I stand to say, let us raise the $15 let us raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Let us raise the wage for the 1 million city residents who live at or below the poverty line. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sophia Cheng with the Restaurant Opportunity Center of Los Angeles. I want to ask people here, I'm sure a lot of people here have worked in the food industry. Were you getting $30, $40, $50 an hour? No. I think this conversation about total compensation is confusing because restaurant workers are part of the working poor in Los Angeles. And I know, Councilmember Martinez, you know this because your father worked as a dishwasher. The median income for restaurant workers in Los Angeles is $15,600, and that's according to the 2013 census. Tips cannot be wages because they are not guaranteed income. A worker at Denny's is not going to make the same as a server at a fine dining restaurant. And we had another speaker talk about how minimum wage workers, 2/3 are women. Well, 70% of tipped workers are women, and the majority of women of color work in places casual, family style, like Denny's. And so to have a sub-minimum wage that is lower for tipped workers means that we are institutionalizing a lower wage for women and women of color. Additionally, a sub-minimum wage would also increase wage theft. So in many states, people actually do have an unequal sub-minimum wage. The Department of Labor just investigated 9,000 restaurants and found that 84% were in violation of making up that tip minimum. So if we as a city are barely beginning to enforce our current wage theft problem, how are we going to introduce a sub-minimum wage that's going to just exacerbate that problem? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Yvonne Yin Liu, Berlinda Ramos, Emma Delgado, Chaz Grayson, William Flores, Reverend Mark Nkawagawa, and Kwazi Nkrumah. Please come forward.
Hello, good evening. My name is Jenny Devi. I'm a garment worker. In the garment industry, they pay very, very low, under minimum wage. Most of them pay by piece. As a woman worker and a single mother, I have to leave the baby with the babysitter. When my boss didn't not pay me about 2 weeks, I still have to pay the babysitter. I'm joined with the Government Worker Center, and I go to the Labor Commission. Then the Labor Commission called my boss to negotiate it. But my boss yelled back to the deputy, he not gonna pay me because he say he doesn't have money. I know the process gonna take a long time, and my case is stuck there. And the most important is in the garment industry, there is a lot of case of wage theft. Sir, please, we need stronger law, and we support $15 minimum wage and enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Yvonne Yen Liu, and I work as a researcher at the Economic Roundtable. You heard a lot from us on Tuesday, so I just wanted to share, though, specifically some of the statistics that we got for benefits to South Los Angeles with the 1525 raise. You know, Los Angeles clearly is a wealthy city, but that wealth is not evenly distributed. And most of the minimum wage jobs are actually located in high-income neighborhoods where the average median household income earns over $70,000. And yet these workers who own minimum wages live in places like South Los Angeles. So with a boost of 1525, South Los Angeles in particular will see a 5% increase in wages. 7% of jobs will will receive a raise. And that means that household income will increase overall as well. And there's been studies that show that households that earn minimum wages tend to spend their money and circulate their money back into the economy, whereas folks that are earning $70,000 put their money into offshore bank accounts or into their own savings. So this is a direct investment into the city of Los Angeles by raising the wage to $15.25.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Emma Delgado. I'm with the United Wilmington Youth Foundation, also a realtor and financial planner, and a previous Harbor Area Planning Commissioner. I worked with businesses and worked with many families and seen the struggle. We help displaced youth with the Wilmington Foundation to have better life, better job opportunities, better income for our youth. That's our future, and we want to keep the peace in the streets. And I've seen a lot of the families working in real estate, and that's actually why I became a financial planner, because I see so many families, they want to buy a home, they want the future, but they don't have the means. So I actually, now sit down with them and say, let's look at how can you put a retirement plan together. Let's look at how you can save for what your goals and dreams are. And this is definitely going to be a step in the right direction for the families that I've worked with. And I agree with the policy as a graduate of UC Berkeley from Wilmington that we will be helping over 500,000 out of poverty Angelenos. And the time is now. I see that we have to take our finances into our own hands nowadays, and this is going to be something to catapult and propel our economy, our employees. People, we're talking about single mothers having to work 2 and 3 jobs, grandparents having to get out of retirement to help their grandchildren and families, families having to squeeze into a 1-bedroom apartment. I've talked to a lot of families, and this is definitely going to help us start taking things into our own hands and investing and be able to protect our income and plan for things that we want to achieve in the future and leave a legacy for our children and our children's children. So I do support Mayor Garcetti. I've spoken to business owners who, see that it can be added value and experience paying that amount, a higher wage, but they will, willing to do it. And I believe Angelenos are added value that can, be invested in properly. So thank you for your time.
Thank
Have
you.
a good
Thank you
evening.
for your comments. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chaz Grayson. I'm 23 years old, and I'm a member of the Los Angeles Black Workers Center. and I too support the $15 minimum wage enforcement. I've been working mostly part-time minimum wage jobs since the age of 15, and I'm currently a non-union construction worker, and I've experienced wage theft a numerous amount of times. My boss tells me week after week that my overtime wages will be on my next check, but I haven't gotten paid yet. I'm owed, I'm owed thousands in unpaid overtime. There are far too many similar stories, and even working a full-time job, I still need to rely on food stamps just to eat, and I have to buy my own tools and work gear. And yes, it's expensive. It shouldn't be this way. And besides, all odds being against me, my dream is to have a career in the construction field as a union worker. In a harsh field where black workers only make up 2% of the construction industry. Los Angeles is one of the wealthiest cities in the nation, and yet we have one of the highest rates of poverty and climbing. As we as a people have a lot to get done. Stop shipping our jobs overseas and pay Angelenos what they deserve, enough to live, not just survive. I'm calling on the city of Los Angeles to support the wage increase of $15 an hour, wage theft, anti-discrimination, enforcement, and earned 6 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I also have a stack of petitions.
Yeah, you can turn them
May I
into the
approach?
clerk, to the officer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
You have a good one. All jobs matter.
Good afternoon. My name is William Flores, and I am here to support the 15 with enforcement. I'm a program coordinator at CD Tech, Community Development Technologies, and one of my jobs is to walk around the community and inform the community of different opportunities that they have available to them to be able to better their life situations. We're currently trying to work ourselves out of a job, because that is the job of a nonprofit. There's a lot of people in the community that are suffering. There's multiple families. When I knock on a door, there's multiple families in one household. Now, this is both beautiful, but it's also very compelling. For I too come from one of those families. We're supporting each other and helping one another to be able to get by. Now, all we ask is for y'all to support the 15 so that we have a chance to be able to get by. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the council and staff, good evening. My name is Mark Nakagawa, and I actually am here to speak tonight with two hats, my professional hat and my personal one. My professional hat is as a United Methodist minister serving Centenary United Methodist Church here in Los Angeles. Centenary for years was in the Crenshaw area where I was born and raised. Today that church is in downtown Los Angeles, Little Tokyo. But we still have a constituency and a membership that lives all over the city. I'm here to lift up, as a United Methodist pastor, our denomination's social principles. We do have social principles that speak to what we believe are God's conditions as part of the economic order. And very simply, we believe that governments have a very important role to play in maintaining a solid foundation of economic life and support for all citizens of all people of this world, and that includes a living wage. We also believe that corporations have a role to play in saying that it is not just stockholders who are their most important people, but all stakeholders, including customers, vendors, and clients. Our United Methodist Church has a strong tradition of social justice, particularly economic justice, and I lift that part of our church up tonight before you. My personal hat is one that I really want to share, maybe a little bit more than my professional one.
Yeah, if you could be brief, Pastor, I appreciate it.
On the way here tonight, I drove past a small store on Central Avenue, 105th and Central, that my uncle owned 60 years ago. I worked in that store from the time I was 10 all the way through college. It's right across the street from Markham Junior High, 2 blocks this side of the Nick. Many of our customers, even before I get to that, we were here during the riots, the Rio riots, the Watts riots. After all was said and done, our store was one of only 2 buildings that was left standing on Charcoal Alley. The other store was right next door to us. It was a mom and pop vegetable store owned also by another Japanese American family. We stayed here. We did not leave. We helped rebuild this community. Many of our customers lived in this area and worked at that time at the Firestone rubber plant out in Southgate and other corporations, factories that were here at that time. If my uncle were alive today, I think he would have a lot of pity for the young man who now runs the store that he owned. Corporations and factories have left this part of the country, and they have been replaced by service sector jobs, many of them of modest wages, and I say that objectively, not subjectively. And also at the same time, government was not as complex back then. And while it is one thing to say we are in favor of a living wage, which I am, it is also incumbent upon government, and in this case city government, to do what you can to make it possible for businesses to pay a higher livable wage. Create the conditions, such as a fair taxation system that taxes profits and not just revenues, especially revenues when there are no profits.
Okay, Pastor.
Okay. To create other policies that enable businesses, particularly small businesses, to be able to pay that higher living wage. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Merlinda Ramos, and I'm here with the United Youth Foundation. I would like to say I would like $15 an hour to go up for the families of the poor. There's a lot of us out, a lot of the, like myself, I'm low-income family. So I would just like to see it go up.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you to the mayor for the support of Los Angeles County.
Thank you for your comments.
My name is Kwasi Nkrumah. I'm the co-chair of the Martin Luther King Coalition of Greater Los Angeles. I'm also the president of the Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council from Mr. Farrell's area. Both organizations have endorsed the call for $15.25 an hour. We think this should happen immediately. Again, earned time off and protection against wage theft are basic. But you know, a number of people have raised that the wage issue does not stand alone. As Mr. O'Farrell pointed out, it's also tied to the housing question. As someone else pointed out, it's tied to the cost of food, clothing, and many other basic necessities that people have. I think that what we are here tonight to do is to ask you, as public officials, to contribute to putting a brake on the downward economic slide of our communities. This is not limited to LA. It's a nationwide problem. It goes back to the trickle-down theory of economics that's been riding high in this country for 35 years and that has produced a phenomena of 1% up here and 99% being trickled on. And we're tired of being trickled on. We need an economics of upward flow, not downward trickle. And that is what we need. We hope that we can get through the city council. But folks, if we don't get it through our city council, we have the right to put this on the ballot in Los Angeles and let the people decide.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Yeah, we're down to our last 8 speakers, and so again, I appreciate your patience and your courtesy. Kent Minault, Myra Flores, Sophia Cheng, Marvin Stovall, Lakecia Dukes, Martha Munoz, Mac Shorts, and Alicia Rivera. If any of you are still here, we'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kent Minault. Thanks for raising this wage raising the wage in LA. Thank you for the initiative. I work with the Sierra Club on sustainability issues, and I'm speaking in support of a $15 minimum wage with enforcement. I also sit on the LA Clean Energy Coalition, and we speak sometimes with the Mayor's Office of Sustainability. And so I studied the United Nations Sustainable Development Plan, and I noticed an interesting thing. The first item on the UN's list of criteria for a sustainable society is not clean energy from wind and the sun, it's not clean water, it's not even fixing education. The first item on the list is eliminate poverty. If you have a society with extremes of wealth and poverty, it's not sustainable. At some point, it will go down. Here in LA, if you work and are living and are earning less than $15 an hour, you're in poverty. So let's raise the minimum wage with enforcement and lead this country into the 21st century.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es Marta Muñoz y estoy aquí en apoyo al aumento del salario de $15.25 la hora.
Good evening to everybody. My name is Marta Muñoz, and I'm here in support of the raise of the minimum wage to $15.25 an hour.
Lo necesitamos hoy, no dentro de un año, 2, 3, 4 o 5. Se requiere ahora.
So we need it now, not in a year or 2 or a couple. We need it now.
Desafortunadamente, la avaricia de unos cuantos los hace hacer muchas investigaciones y estudios para venir a presentar que no es justo ahorita el salario mínimo de $15.25, pero no es así.
Unfortunately, because of the greed of many, there are these reports that need to come out to, point us away from the idea that it's not necessary right now, but the truth is that it is.
Esa avaricia viene de la situación de que ellos sí tienen un techo donde dormir y una vida digna, lo que la mayoría de la gente trabajadora en Los Ángeles, en California y en todo Estados Unidos no lo tiene.
And that greed comes from the fact that they have a roof over their head, which unfortunately many people here in Los Angeles and across the country do not have that.
Yo también soy dueña de un pequeño negocio y quiero hablarles a los que vinieron a decir que también son dueños de pequeños negocios.
I am an owner of a small business, and I want to speak to those that spoke tonight as small business owners.
Mis matemáticas son simples. Si la mayoría de la comunidad del pueblo de Los Ángeles y de California tiene un salario justo de $15.25, ellos van a tener la oportunidad de venir y comprar en mi negocio, y mi negocio va a crecer. So es una falacia el decir que esto no puede suceder.
The mathematics are simple. When it comes to me, I understand that if I'm paying a higher wage to my employees, I understand that in turn they're going to come back into the community and spend money in my business, and in turn reinvigorate those funds into the community.
Solo me resta decir, we live on the land of the free and justice for all. Make it true. Make it come true.
Thank you. No interpreter needed. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marvin Stovall. I am a realtor, and I also represent the United Wilmington Youth Foundation. I am also a longtime member of the Utility Workers Union for over 34 years. One thing I'd like to bring to your attention, as I look across this room, it makes me realize how diverse the city of Los Angeles is. But also I noticed that poverty has no prejudice. Everybody in this room represents somebody else. I think that they should raise this to $15 because I think it's necessary. I have marched with the car wash workers. They're still fighting, and that was 5 years ago. I marched with the nurses. They're still fighting. It's a continuous battle. As I look across this room, I notice that it's thinned out. That's sad because if you're willing to fight for something, you should stay at the distance. So if you are serious about this, don't let this be your last meeting. Continue to fight.
Thank you.
Because if you don't, you will lose. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lakeisha Dukes. I'm a member of ACE. And I'm here in support to support the minimum wage. I live in South Los Angeles and I have a 9-year-old son. I'm a single mom and I work for a private caregiving
to a company to give care to your grandmothers and grandfathers of South Los Angeles. It is a full-time job, but it's more than a full-time obligation because I care for all the clients and the elderly grandmothers and grandfathers. I make the minimum of $9 an hour, which does not go far. I pay my rent and my other bills. If I got a raise, the first thing I would do is get braces for my son. I can't afford them, he needs them, and Medi-Cal does not cover that. I also do not get paid for sick days. So if my son or myself gets sick, I can't take off. I have to choose between going to work or either doing something at my son's school for his conferences or something. And that is a very serious choice I have to make. Either get paid or put my son first. And I always put him first, or myself. I don't understand how working in the healthcare in Los Angeles would make me choose between losing a day's pay and going to work sick, which would put my patients at risk. The company I work for is a rich multinational corporation, and I know they can afford to pay their employees like me, a living wage. So, raise the wage. Not 12, not 13, $15 an hour.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
I'm representing Max Shorty. My name is Darlene Young. I'm the owner of Sister Soul Food in the city of Linwood. I have my own business. And it's hard as a business owner that when they raise the wage to 15, I will have to make a decision to let some of my employees go. I have no other choice. Because when you own your own business, it's a little bit different than when you're working. By me being a business owner, I don't get paid. I don't make any money. All the money I make goes back into the business. So I run a restaurant with 4 employees. I would have to let at least one of them go, which is going to affect their lives. The thing of it is when you tell somebody you have a restaurant and it's on Yelp, you have major reviews, people don't want to come out. They don't want to support you. And I'm aware of this. I worked for Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles for 14 years. When I first started for them, I was making $3.50 an hour. That's what I was making. $15 an hour is a decent wage for people, but people need to learn how to budget their money also. Just because you're making more money an hour don't mean you go out and splurge more an hour.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Mayra Flores. I work at McDonald's, and I'm with the 5 for 15 campaign. And I want to introduce my sister, Mari Carmen. She's going to tell us why it's so important to raise the minimum wage.
Hola. Hi, my name is Mari Carmen. I work in Burger King. I'm a member for 5 for 15. I have 4 kids. One of my kids go to the university. UC Riverside, and support her. And I know you don't care maybe my dreams, but my dream is all my 4 kids go to the college. That's what I want. But you think with that $9 for minimum wage, can this happen? I don't think so. The rent in Los Angeles is too high. The bill is too. With $9, really? 4 kids? It's a big family. I'm in a union. I'm fighting for my right. I'm fighting for my hours. I want my hours back because they give me only 6 hours. It's not enough, that one. I know you know it. It's not fair, really. I'm fighting for my days sick, when I'm sick. If I get sick, can I not go to work? And nobody pay me for that. That one is not fair too. I got no choices. I can get sick. If I get sick, I have to go to work because I have four kids. So I no choices for me. Sick or wherever, I have to go work. The corporation make billions of dollars. We cannot afford to get sick. When you propose anything less than 15, it's not fair. We are struggling to pay for our basic needs. We're fighting for our families, for our kids. We're fighting for a better life. We deserve 15. We deserve a better life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here supporting $15 an hour with enforcement. My name is Shirley Watson. I am 60 years young. I'm a recent widow and a mother to a 22-year-old daughter, and I am a member of the Los Angeles Black Worker Center. I support the $15 minimum wage, earned sick days, and enforcement of all labor laws. I am currently employed by the County of Los Angeles as a part-time in-home care provider. My wage is $9.65 an hour. That is less than $20,000 a year. I was employed in the aerospace industry from 1984 to 2007. Around that time, I was close to retirement age. New management came in, and I lost my job. It was hard to find work after losing my job, so I returned to school and earned a master's degree in 2011. Thought that would make me more marketable. Raising the wage to $15 an hour is very important to me and my family. I do not want my daughter to have my struggles, and I want her to have access to gainful employment. I am calling on the City of Los Angeles to raise the wage to $15 an hour and protect workers from discrimination by enforcing equal employment opportunity laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Good evening. My name is Alicia Rivera. I'm a community organizer in Wilmington for Communities for a Better Environment. And we have 5 refineries there, so we're always looking in the community to try to get people involved in the different issues that are going on related to oil and refineries. But it's very difficult to find people to get involved in that when they have 2 and 3 jobs. And so I get to hear a lot of the stories of why they cannot come to X meeting, and it's very heartbreaking. For example, I have the story of Arcelia, who couldn't come today, and she works at a factory, and when her kids are waking up, she's leaving for her job, and she works 2 jobs, so when she comes back home after midnight, her kids are already in bed, so she doesn't get to see them. And so it's very worrisome for her, to not see her kids and not be involved in their lives. So that takes a toll on the children as well, not to be able to see their kids. So on behalf of Communities for a Better Environment, we believe that this is an issue of fairness to finally raise increase the minimum wage to a living wage, which has been overdue for many years. And my friend here, Belinda, was just telling me on the way here, which it almost made me break to tears, the fact that her child is at a university, but he only gets 1 meal a day, so he's always hungry because when we were coming here, he called her on the phone that he needed $20 to be able to participate in one of the dancing activities that he has to pay the fee, and she can't give him the $20. This is what it comes to for people who are making the current living wage. It's just heartbreaking, and it's just a matter of fairness to give it to them so that they can also get to see their kids here and there.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much for your comments. I want to thank everyone for their attendance, their participation, and for their patience. Councilwoman, we've heard lots of insightful, articulate comments. People supporting a phase-in, concern about nonprofits, transitional wages, the need for more housing, impact on small businesses. Some supporting the $15 with enforcement, concerned about wage theft, paid sick leave. Lots of certainly important concerns for us to include in our deliberations. Do you have any thoughts of what you've heard this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to first apologize for being late. I was coming from the Valley, which is my home. I represent the San Fernando Valley Council District 6, and it took me almost 2.5 hours to get here. So I want to apologize, but I did get to definitely listen to the majority of the public comment this evening. And thank you very much. I understand there was over 250 people in this room. So congratulations to all of you who made the trek of coming here and making sure your voices were heard. A couple of things. I don't think anyone needs to tell you what poverty looks like in your community. Certainly no one needs to tell me what poverty looks like in my community. Not any study, certainly not politicians, and certainly not economists. We know what that looks like because we live with it every single day. And every day in my district, I get to witness and see the thousands of workers that stand in a crowded bus stop to make their trek to clean houses, to take care of our children, and to work in some of our restaurants. I see that every single day. In fact, I grew up with it because my father was a dishwasher. And I'm 42 years old, so I understand and can relate to very much of those same people who get to stand on those crowded bus stops making their trek to work. But what saddens me even more is when we pick up my daughter at my daughter's child care center. I don't have a nanny. I take her and I drop her off at a child care center. When I get to pick her up or my husband at 5 or 6 in the afternoon, we get to see half of those kids stay there because their parents cannot pick them up until almost 9 o'clock in the evening. Half of my daughter's friends in daycare don't get to go home at 5 o'clock because their parents are still at work. So that's the reality of a lot of you in this community. It's certainly the reality of my council district, and that's the intent of my colleagues and I in introducing this motion, is to try to address the wage disparities in this city and do it in a responsible way. So I thank you so much and I heard both sides of the argument. You're welcome to come to my community next Tuesday. We're having the Valley hearing in the community of Van Nuys, which is a community that I represent. So I just want to thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me an opportunity to say a few words. And thank you very much for sharing all of your stories. I jotted notes down, and we're going to continue to have this conversation. And it's controversial, and sometimes it's as painful as it is. We have got to begin addressing these disparities throughout the city of Los Angeles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman, for your comments. And let me just say that this is the start of our work. This is not the end. This is really the beginning. And we look forward to continuing to hear from residents, business owners, other stakeholders on this very important matter, as I said before, was a critical civil rights issue in our time. The number of Angelenos living in poverty is growing rapidly. There are friends, there are neighbors, there are associates. And the troubling dilemma disproportionately impacts people of color living in communities like the one I serve, the one that Nuri serves, South LA, Watts, Wilmington, portions of the Valley. The studies tell us that more than 80% of the workers that would be impacted by our minimum wage proposal are people of color. We know that more than a third of the workers who will see their raises from this proposal are parents. We also know that their kids will be healthier and perform better in school if we can help lift them and their families out of poverty. I understand and empathize with some of the concerns raised by small business owners and some nonprofit leaders, and we heard from some of them this evening. But let's be clear. LA is following in the footsteps of other major cities that have raised wages for their workers. In every one of those cities, people warned that the sky would fall if these wage policies were implemented, and those dire circumstances never materialized. We are clear that here in LA, unlike any other city, as we move forward, we have to craft a fair and just policy when it's tailored for our city. Studies also tell us that the net impact of a policy to raise wages could bring anywhere to millions of dollars in new revenue, sales tax, receipt tax, local spending, creating an economic stimulus for the region. Beyond the financial reasons to implement this policy for me, it's also a pressing moral responsibility. I want to see residents living on their wages, not merely surviving. At a time that LA has an opportunity to reclaim its role as a real center of opportunity for all. And I'm hopeful that moving this policy forward will help us achieve that. As the Councilwoman pointed out, our next community meeting will be held on Tuesday, March 31st at 6 p.m. at the Van Nuys City Hall, 6262 Van Nuys Boulevard. And we look forward to seeing all of you there, to your continued ideas and suggestions and comments. We're eager to make certain we have a clear, transparent process as we make this very important policy discussion. Mr. Clerk, is there any other business before us at this time?
No, that concludes the agenda.
Well, concludes the agenda being concluded. This meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you.